Welcome back to Kevin Pollak's Chat Show. I am, as always, Chat Show. How the hell are you? Are you ready for the holidays? Are you tired of our already being asked this question? We're coming to you from the Earwolf Studios in Hollywood, California. If you're in the area, stop on by. Come up to the second floor, say hello. There's no security. Just walk right in. Tell them I sent you, and give them your best or your worst, whatever you're feeling on the day you arrive. I'm very excited to chat with my guest today. I'm going to give you a little preamble because season 2 of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel has in fact dropped, and it's been a whirlwind. There was a New York premiere last week, and then jetted off to the European premiere. That's the thing about these streaming services. They do these European premieres and press events. And the cast went to Milan. That's in Italy.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
For the European press. And we each had our own driver and bodyguard. I did not realize that kidnapping was an issue in Milan. Wasn't even thinking about it until the gentleman with a firearm in the small of his back walked in front of me, next to me and behind me at all times.
Wow.
We, the cast, would go to dinner, and then we'd each have our own car, which if you didn't want to take your own car and actually get into someone else's car, they got very sad. My driver, Umberto, in his early 60s, I'm guessing, based on height and weight, seemed just crestfallen when I said I was going to go with Tony Shalhoub in his car. But like he would have to report it to his family when he got back. He did not let me drive. And then, so we were walking home from dinner, one of my favorite moments from the international thing. And it felt like Michael Corleone walking with Apollonia after the wedding with the guys with the shotguns in front and behind them as they walk through the town. Yeah, it was laughable. And also found out the bodyguards were wearing Kevlar vests.
Jesus.
Which, you know, we were sort of taken aback. Why don't we get a vest?
Yeah, exactly.
Why is and then someone pointed out so that they could take a bullet for us.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It does.
But they were walking behind you.
Exactly.
So the bullet came from the front. You'd
Yeah.
be taking a bullet for them.
I think they've seen too much of Oliver Stone's movie JFK.
I think we all have.
Yeah, I think we've seen just enough.
Just enough.
So write to us at kpcsfanmail@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the season 2. I told all the press in New York for the big premiere there, as well as the Milan event, lower your expectations and you will be thrilled. I find that to be the best advice. And I'm not supposed to ever say these words, but it's better than season 1. It really is. I don't know how.
And season 1 was great.
Season 1 wasn't horrible.
It was great. No, and I was saying to you,
Yeah.
I know people don't know who I am, but I was saying to you
That's Chris Elliott, ladies
back
and Jews.
before I sat down here that I think the show captures that era in a way that's really difficult to do.
It's a magical thing.
Yeah, it's
Right?
hard. It's hard to do that, though. I grew up in New York City, and my dad was in the business when this movie takes place, and not movie, your series takes place, and New York, it's a hard thing to pin New York down. I don't think they can do when movies try to do it in the 70s. I don't think they get it right.
Yes.
But I think your show is actually getting it right.
Painstakingly detailed in that regard. The show's creator, Amy Sherman Palladino, too many names.
Yeah, that's 4 people. Isn't it? Yeah.
Her father was a comic at the time.
Right.
And she was around that world.
Right.
As a youngster, and it clearly stayed with her. The wardrobe, the cinematography, all of it.
Yeah.
There's a weird alchemy that a great deal of attention is being spent, but still.
But that's good, though. That's what makes it
right.
Believable. That's what makes it, true.
I stepped on a term I'm going to repeat.
Okay.
Which is authentic, heightened reality.
Yeah. That
seems to be what
perfect.
What let's not fight like this so soon in the conversation.
I have no idea what we're talking about anyway.
Well,
no, but those details, and I'm like, I think it's like a thing with me. Like movies that show people watching the moon landing and Neil Armstrong stepping off on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. I remember watching it in New York, but I also remember everybody turned their lights out in their room to watch it because it was such a bad transmission from the moon that the best way to see it was if the room was dark around you. And nobody ever gets that right when they do these
Never
movies.
even crossed my mind.
But that's like
detail.
a little detail that, if you looked out and looked in apartments, they were all dark except for this, light glowing because they wanted to be able to see it. Just thought I'd throw that out. That's all I got for you. But I can do 20 on it.
That's all the time we have, so that's kind of well suited. That's been Chris Elliott, and congratulations on the film. Where can we tell people to go see it? I do want to talk about so many things, but let's talk about the motion picture first. Mm-hmm. Here's what I wrote down. My guest today is mostly famous to the television viewing audience as the much-loved, put-upon character of the guy under the seats from a moderate hit late-night television program starring one David Letterman. Please welcome a man who needs a much longer introduction, Mr. Christopher Elliott. It never crossed my mind to write a man who needs a much longer introduction. And again, that's a keeper.
No, that's a good, No, you can use that on other people, too.
And I
Go
will.
ahead.
When I stumble across something, I don't know if you've
I
seen-
got to say, and
Yes.
this is not kissing your ass right off the bat, but
Sure,
I
sure.
think I should.
Let's do that.
I am starstruck, and I don't get starstruck.
Can't imagine.
Anymore. I grew out of that at Letterman when I worked for Letterman, but I am such a huge fan of yours, Kevin, and everything that you do.
Wow.
And, at Casino, whenever I see that, my favorite parts in it are you. And I just, even
Is it the don't watch?
End of Days, I'm still a fan of as well. I'm sorry you can laugh, but you were
I'm
great in
laughing.
it. You were great in it.
Well, thank you.
As you are in everything that you do.
Those are the two films that play on a continuous loop in 7 different screens throughout my home on a 24/7 basis.
No, there is nothing. And there are actors, including myself. Well, I would definitely include myself in this, where you can see him walking through something, or you don't see him really giving 100%, or
A little hit and miss.
Yeah, it's for the money or whatever. I've never seen that in any of your work.
Well, I'll point you to several, just so we get that out of the way.
I'm sure it's happened. I'm just saying I've never seen it, and I'm a stickler for details,
Wow.
as you know.
I am,
'cause turning the lights out when you watch the moon landing.
No, believe me, coming off dovetailing of that detail, I do feel better about your insistent fanship. The weird thing for me is when you meet when anyone in show business or those of us in the comedic creative world meet someone that we admire, and it turns out they're also a fan.
Right.
It is a bizarre thing. So we do have a mutual admiration thing.
Well, that's sweet.
I
That's
wasn't
nice.
kidding. From the first episode of Guy Under the Seats. Well, first of all, I wonder if you remember my favorite episode. I'll give you one hit.
No, this will be good because I'll tell you.
been a while.
Well, no, I will tell you honestly. People will come up to me and they'll say, "I remember you did this or that or this and that." It was so disposable what I was doing. It was disposable in my
To
brain.
you.
Yeah.
To
yeah,
us.
I would throw it away
Yeah.
because I had to think of what am I going to do next week? I got to do something else. So I may not remember this. Also, I
think you
having
might, just
short
based on
memory loss here. But go on.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I'm going to give you a line that you said to Dave during this episode. They were
Okay.
numbered episodes
Yes.
of The Guy Under the Seats. And a little background for, I'm going to say the majority of you who don't know what I'm talking about.
Or have any idea who I am.
In the early days of Letterman at the NBC network, he was really, and you were a writer at the time?
Well, I started as a runner.
Oh, sure.
I was made a production assistant, and then they made me a writer.
Mm-hmm.
But I was on the show from the beginning. Dave was putting me on and letting me be a goofball even when I was a runner.
And because your own personality came through in those early positions to a point where he was able to say, let's get this fucking guy in the show.
Absolutely. It was a small group of people, and you had access to Dave. I had access to him, and I would go out on remotes with him. And I guess I made him laugh, but that kind of surly persona that I started to develop, this kind of guy who really wants to be famous and underneath the surface is kind of this psychopath, I would do up in the office for Dave.
And where do you think, what was the genesis of that personality trait? It just came to you very easily, clearly. But did it come to you young?
It was me. There was a lot of truth to it. I mean, there was a lot of truth. There still is a lot of anger. I don't know where the anger comes from, the bitterness, but the idea of a guy with no talent being, jealous of Dave on the air, I think, the audience kind of, agreed with. Yeah.
It was, for those of us who watched the show religiously at the time, it was something I always looked forward to because of the consistency with which the character so close to you that you portrayed, as you ultimately ended up sitting next to Dave with this same attitude of disdain, was so pure. So the line you said in this particular episode of The Guy Under the Seats, wherein, again, for the audience listening who have not seen this, several of them are available waiting for you on the YouTube. In the middle of the interview, in this case, it was an interview. Dave was, I think, promoting who the guests were later in the show or maybe the next day. And then he just hears off camera, hey, Dave. And then there's a camera angle into the seats of the audience. And then, of course, there's a little stair walkway in the aisle. And part of the floor of the stairs would pop open like a trapdoor. And out would come you as this character known as the Guy Under the Seats.
Right.
Without giving too much backstory, further backstory, getting to this episode, I'll give you a hint which episode it was, because you say to Dave, hey, Dave, have you met my friend Pinky?
I think that was the ventriloquist
yes, it was.
episode.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That was
titled,
that
in
was
fact,
that was a favorite.
Chris and Pinky.
Yeah, I mean, the whole concept back then was, Dave let me do this, was, here is this staff member who desperately wants to be on TV. And so he's coming up with these characters. And I would do like maybe 12 episodes of a character, like the Guy Under the Seats, and then I would kill him off.
Sure.
And we'd have an emotional montage and make the audience cry at having to say goodbye to this lame character.
Right. But there was full-on commitment, never winking at the camera.
No, that's not what I do. No. I can't do that. No. People, I think the reason that I've had a certain amount of cult following is because I don't do that, because I've tried to be true to the persona that I've developed, which sort of happened accidentally, like I said, up in the office. And I didn't go to college. I went from high school to being a tour guide at Rockefeller Center. I met Dave during his morning show there. And I think, the stuff I was fooling around with in high school in class, I was allowed to do in the offices and at late night. I was just giving permission to that. I used to walk around with my shirt off, like I was working in a garage, and I'd go stand in Dave's doorway with my shirt off, like I was hitting flies on the back of my neck, just asking him if he needed anything, any coffee or whatever, and he'd just look up and just go, "Oh, Jesus Christ, no, I don't need anything." And, but it was that freedom that allowed me, I think, to do the stuff that I did on the show.
Before I ask the question, I'm going to put the over-under, regarding your answer, I'm going to put the over-under at 11 times. And the question is, how many times over the course of these drop-bys into the doorway of Dave's office did he say, quote, "What's the matter with you?" Is 11 times close for an over-under?
That is an under. That is without a doubt an under. Jesus Christ, what is your problem? What is the matter with you? I think he did say that to me several times.
Yeah.
But he also just,
while loving it, clearly.
While loving it, and I think we had something in common. We had a few things in common: self-hatred, for sure, and also There was one time Dave and I were on a remote and we were actually doing it in the hallways at NBC, and he was telling me something, and I told him something and he started laughing. And at that very moment, somebody walked by, a delivery guy walked by and stopped and gave Dave a really dirty look, and because he thought Dave was laughing at him. And the guy said, "What's so funny?"
Jesus.
And Dave was like, "No, nothing, sir. My friend here said something funny. I was just laughing at that. It had nothing to do with you, sir. Absolutely nothing to do." And the guy was like ready to punch Dave out.
Not letting it go.
But he eventually walked away.
Right.
And I was like in shock. And Dave said, "That shit's been happening to me all my life." and you know what? That it sort of had been to me. Like
people
were,
on you. That was you.
Yeah. Are you being funny? You know, are you trying to be funny now?
Right.
It was the same. We had that in common.
Well, that also speaks to your commitment to be dry and not wink and not even let anyone in on the joke. They were either going to follow in step or they weren't.
Right.
You weren't pausing for the pedestrians to catch up.
No, I wasn't, and it wasn't that I didn't care, because I would be.
No, of course you cared.
Of course I
You're
wanted
as needy
to,
as the next funny guy.
Exactly.
Desperate, in fact.
Everybody wants to be successful and all that, but I did, and I've said this before, but I did realize early on that if I made Dave laugh, that's all that mattered on TV. It didn't matter if the audience got it. You know, the home audience would. If the studio audience didn't necessarily get it, that was okay, but as long as Dave was laughing, I felt like, okay, I was doing the right thing.
I'm old enough that I appeared a number of times sitting on the couch with Dave's hero, Johnny Carson. Mm-hmm. And the best compliment anyone would ever give me afterwards, the best, most meaningful to me compliment would always be not about a particular bit or interaction. It would be, "Johnny really likes you."
Yeah.
And so that's all we ever strive for, was to make the king laugh.
Right, exactly.
For sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then was there a mentor in your life that you still think about in terms of, like with Dave, and my best friend Adam Resnick and I share this, no matter what it is that we're doing, we're always wondering, it's always in the back of our heads, would Dave like this? Mm-hmm. Is this something Dave would approve of? Would Dave think it's funny? I think it's because I didn't go to college and Dave was actually my professor. Yeah. The teacher you like, the teacher that, you know, influences you the most. And I think, Carl Reiner said that, he felt the same way about Sid Caesar, that he still, even now still thinks, would Sid like this? Would Sid think it's funny?
Yeah, that was a missing mentor for me.
Schwarzenegger.
I was
after
clearly
after that movie, I would imagine.
I will. You imagine correctly. And often.
Well, that's kind of live in an imaginary world here, Kevin.
Yes. But I was influenced over time by certain people, but I never worked for one or was under the guidance of one long enough for me to, but I do appreciate what you're saying very much.
Yeah, no, I can't, it went to who I married. Would Dave approve?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And I'm being totally honest.
Yeah.
It's just and I'm glad, more than my dad. And more than thinking, because I knew my dad would support anything I did, and
right, and you didn't have to earn his. No, he was built in.
No, and Dave, you had to earn it every day. Every day. It was not, it wasn't a given. But the best days for me at late night were when I did something on the show. And Dave would walk by my office after the taping and stop and go, "Oh, no, I thought that went real well. I thought that was good." And then move on down. I would be high for, usually I always hoped it would happen on a Friday so I could just have a great weekend, just knowing the boss loved what I did.
Yeah. And you got a sentence to.
And I got a sentence. I got, he didn't do that to people, you know, but he actually, other than the head writer, he would, say, "Yeah, I didn't think that went well." But to me,
you knew how uncomfortable it made him to have to share that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I could see the similarities with how physically uncomfortable you got letting me know that you were a fan of mine.
Well, I had to practice it a lot this morning at 5 a.m. I'm on East Coast time, so don't worry about that. But I was trying to think, how do I approach this? Do I remind him that I met him on a plane?
Yes.
Do I do I bring up End of Days, and then now I can tell you're pissed off that I keep bringing it up?
Well, I'm not pissed off.
And honestly, I enjoyed that movie.
Oh, I could tell. I've heard the version where the person's making fun of me, and I've heard the version like yourself where the person actually liked either what I did in the film or the film itself as well.
Well, I like both.
Yeah, either way, I'm accepting it.
Okay.
The agent called, not that a qualifier is needed from a person who actually enjoyed it, but the agent called and said, how would you like to be number 3 in the call sheet of a $100 million Schwarzenegger Big Top Circus?
Right.
And I said, who's number 2? And he said, Gabriel Byrne. I said, well, then all the pressure's off me. The answer is yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He said, do you want to read the script? And I said, no, why would I want to do that? That might undermine my interest.
That's not part of your method.
No. I love giving interviews where they say, what was your research on this? And I would say, I eventually had the guy who cleans the pool read the script to me.
So are you the kind of actor that can do... You could be talking to me and then somebody say action and you're the character.
Yeah, in fact, I have to watch it around actors with actual training.
I'm the same exact way.
Yeah.
But I admire the actors that, like yourself, that can do that. And I've heard that like Christopher Plummer, can be having a glass of scotch and a cigarette, doing a Broadway play and talking to the stage manager, whispering to the stage manager about, his house in Connecticut or whatever. And then suddenly hears his cues, puts it down, goes out, does a perfect scene, acting, and then walks back out, and it's Christopher Plummer again. He's not in character. It's the guy, and I really admire that. To me, is talent. That to me is talent.
Well, I agree with you. I feel the same way, but I do wonder, in a similar way, that when people say, "You got stand-up comedy, how do you do that?" And the answer is always, it's not a mystery to those of us who do it.
Right.
It's not a challenge for those of us who do it. In fact, I'm more comfortable on stage as a stand-up comedian than I am in a conversation with anyone.
Right, except me right now.
Clearly. But
you do seem uncomfortable.
Sammy will tell you, I've not been this relaxed in a while.
Well, how many beta blockers are you on at this point?
I'm on just the right amount, I'm going to say.
Both. You and me both, pal.
I do overdo the Propecia. I think if you're the type of actor, as I am, who can be telling a story and then I have to stop the story to do a take.
Right.
If that comes naturally to you, I don't know that that's a talent. I think it's the opposite of a talent. I think it's that I have no technique and training, and so therefore I don't need to think about what I'm about to do the way a trained person should and would.
But you're intrinsically talented with that way. It's like Don Rickles was a brilliant actor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and he didn't have a method.
No.
He wasn't.
Oh, I can tell you from Casino.
Yeah,
that.
But and before Casino,
of course.
He was playing guys in submarines in World War II movies.
Kelly's Hero.
Yeah.
That was the first time I saw him in a movie.
Right.
And in fact, I often remember that as the moment, as a very young man who wanted to be a comedian. Oh, I could be an actor too. Look at Don Rickles. He's completely believable in this movie.
Right.
In fact, he's kind of Don Rickles, and yet he's playing this character.
Yes.
So apparently I don't have to go to acting school.
Right.
This is fantastic.
Right.
It was a real breakthrough for me.
Well, I think that sort of happened with me. I mean, I've never had to do, like you, a dramatic role, really. I mean,
but I will tell you, comedy's way harder, as it's always been said, because you have to, as we talked about, you have to commit to whatever the bit is, commit to the character. So you're already doing a dramatic acting. The truth I found pretty early on is just make it real. So whether it's comedy or drama, you just have to never get caught acting.
Right. That's so true.
That's the only objective for me.
And I have this thing about comedy. as a not stand-up comedy, because that is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's stand-up comedy. That's supposed to be what it is. I have a problem with things that point an arrow at comedy.
Worst.
To me, the funniest things are things that come out of drama, or a movie that's a drama, but there are funny moments in it, or there is a funny line, or an actor like yourself pulls off an attitude that's really funny, that's actually funny.
Yeah.
It's in all genres. Like Rosemary's Baby is a horror film, but there's so much comedy in that movie when I watch it. The characters, the witches, are so funny. They're
Gordon.
so well. She's hilarious in that movie.
Unbelievable.
The Dr. Shane who plays the recorder is hilarious in that movie. And I can laugh at that. Early on, when the Comedy Channel first started.
Sure. As it was called.
I remember that's what it was called, and I remember taking a meeting, I think with Stu Smiley, and sitting down, and he had the whole board open. It was all open, 24 hours a day. He said, "You can have any slot you want." And I said, "Well, wait. So wait, it's all comedy?
Yeah.
It's all just going to be comedy, and even like the commercials and everything are going to be comedy?" And I had such disdain for that idea, because even to me on Letterman, the best comedy was when it was just suddenly a shock. Oh, that's really funny. That's really funny.
Yes. Yeah. I agree with everything you just said. Basically, it's and the little asides, early Bob Hope that Woody Allen admitted he stole from or influenced by.
Right.
Just when I do Woody Allen, in fact, I'm putting glasses on for the effect. It's just, that's all Bob Hope, 100%.
Right.
And it's just, it was always the asides for the same thing I would point to in my early education of comedy from Mad Magazine, the little tiny drawings in the panels along the side.
You're right. You're
those
absolutely
little
right.
asides also, which we're not going to give them their own stage and platform.
You may not notice them.
Yeah.
But if you do,
you've just graduated 101.
Right.
Yeah.
And you'll laugh.
I would go right to them first.
When you mentioned Bob Hope, and I was talking about my dad earlier too, I think like there are actors now that are doing kind of Woody Allen without even realizing that they're doing Woody Allen.
Sure.
And they don't realize that what they're doing is Woody Allen doing Bob Hope.
That's exactly right.
And that Bob Hope was probably influenced by somebody in vaudeville that, he loved,
undeniable.
And I think actors and comedians now, and I think I'm usually aware of what has influenced me, but I think people who have voices now in the business, they don't necessarily know where it came from.
Right.
They don't know what influenced them.
Even the so-called true originals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I guess it goes to, everything old is new again, but it's sort of like, I know a lot of people were influenced by my dad's work, but if you mention Bob and Ray to them, they wouldn't know who they were.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Well, it's just through osmosis or through generations, of a way of delivering something, that now they're doing it.
That's right.
And I guess that's natural.
I think it's part of every art form.
Yeah.
I mean, you steal first, and then you're influenced by, and then you find your own voice. And then, as it turns out, I agree with you, your own voice is still derivative. Of those who influenced you.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's probably, if we tried, I believe we could sit down, as we are, and make a list of 17 very funny people who are completely derivative of Bill Murray.
Oh, absolutely.
For example.
Absolutely.
And yet, and there's that seemingly true original Bill, but I'm sure if you had a conversation and asked him, he would point to who he was influenced by.
Yes.
I can't pull it out who he was influenced by, but I'm sure he would know.
And he is one of those people you look at and you go, well, that's a total original. You don't see.
And the asides.
Right.
In Stripes, there are so many little tiny things that he throws away. That are as quotable to me as anything.
I think that's also a key to, not that I hate talking about comedy, but I think that is a key to.
I think we're doing it well right now. Though.
Okay. Is throwing something away.
But by the way, it's all that to me.
It is to me too.
With drama as well.
And I agree. And again, not to harp on Adam Resnick, who's my best friend in the world and writing partner, and we worked at Letterman together and all that. He is the champion of writing lines that if an actor delivers them hard, as if here's a hard joke, they die. But if you throw them away and act like you don't give a shit about this line, they're hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, sort of what I've always tried to do whenever I do anything, acting wise, And I guess I have done a little drama on TV. There was a series called Third Watch where I played a psycho, and
how fun was that, by the way?
It was really fun, but like you said, I didn't find it that challenging or that hard. I realized, okay, I have to make this guy believable, but I try to make my funny characters believable too.
Most of your comedy has a sociopathic aspect.
Yes, yeah, so it fit perfectly for that.
Probably why they thought of you.
And I'm sure it was funny to some people what I was doing, too, even though I had kidnapped a woman they were trying desperately to find out where she was and I wasn't telling them.
But that is funny.
Well, of course that's funny, but.
Should we talk about your daughter's film?
Yeah, Bridie.
I mean, I don't want to not talk about it.
No, I want to talk about it.
But
I thought we have like 3 hours here, right? So I thought that would be hour
In the old days, we had 3 hours. I did go 2 hours and 52 minutes with John Landis.
Oh, well,
he has the record. Tom Hanks just under that, 2 hours and 42 minutes.
Right.
But it was a week before Christmas, and he had a Pabst Blue Ribbon in each hand, and I'm not exaggerating.
Tom Hanks did?
He's a talker.
Wow.
No, he had just finished doing massive and endless press.
Am I yammering on too much?
It's impossible.
No, seriously,
No, God, no. No, okay. In fact, I make all these notes, and my prayer is that the guest yammers on.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, if I am,
because if you don't, then I have to come up with more questions.
So Bridie, my daughter, youngest daughter, Bridie Elliott.
I remember following Bridie Elliott on Twitter as early as 8 years ago.
That's so great. I'm going to tell her that. She is also, she does. I mean, she's at some point, a huge fan of yours as well.
We were communicating. I complimented her on something. And again, this is 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, she's very funny on Twitter. I'm not, I don't do that. I don't do Twitter. I'm not on anything. Well, I think I come from an old school, and I've said this to Bridie. Aren't you just giving away material by doing that? The
answer is yes.
Shouldn't you hold on to those lines or
the good news is, it's more disposable than any other form of entertainment, so it doesn't even matter that you gave it away.
Right, but doesn't it mean somebody can take it and use it in their show or movie or something?
In the early days of Twitter, because I got on super early, because I was the beginning of this show, which will be 10 years in March.
Congratulations. That's great.
This internet mini mogul. Jason Calacanis, dear friend, average poker player, he introduced me to really the internet, but specifically content. And the show was started under his auspices, and he had this little studio space. And he signed me onto Twitter 10 years ago when it wasn't really being talked about much.
Right.
And when I then sort of developed an idea of how to use it, and people would ask me, well, what is the deal? Like, I remember doing a movie with Steve Martin, and Joel McHale and I are in the scene with him, and we were both on our phones on Twitter, and he said, what is this thing? And we literally explained to Steve Martin what it was, and then he became prolific.
Right, then he started doing it
and produced a book of his tweets.
Right.
So there's the example of that material
being used
by the author.
But there's no copyright, though.
Of course not.
Yeah.
But I would tell people, if stage one of being on Twitter, just in terms of letting people know what your personality or your sense of humor is, find people that you think are funny that are on Twitter and just retweet their stuff.
Right.
Which is not stealing.
Right.
It's supposed to be flattering.
Yeah. It's
when you retweet someone
admiration
else. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But all you're really doing is, these are the things I think are funny.
Right.
Right.
So that sets the tone, so people would expect when you start writing your own stuff.
Exactly. So in the old days of a stand-up, you would steal some guy's material, do it as your own, so you would learn timing.
Right.
And then eventually you would learn to write for your own voice. So now with Twitter, it's not stealing. I'm retweeting, sharing this other person's brilliance.
To open up your audience to your way of thinking.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's an introduction. So I remember Bridie I mean, initially I thought, if I ever do get a chance to talk to her father, Christopher, I'm going to have to ask him, where did the name come from? So let's start there.
Well, two different places. One, I grew up in New York City, and Darren McGavin lived across the street, and one of his daughter's name was Bridget, and I always liked that name, so it came from that. But it really came from my dad had given me a book when I was a kid called The Search for Bridie Murphy, which was about a woman. It was who was hypnotized in the 1950s and went back, regressed in life. She lived in Westchester, but thought she was a maid in Ireland named Bridie Murphy. And she talked with a brogue accent. She could dance a jig.
This was a piece of fiction your father gave you to read?
It's a real story.
Nonfiction.
Nonfiction. And they actually put out, they put out LPs of the
of her talking.
Of the sessions, when you can hear her suddenly start talking in this Irish brogue and doing, oh, well, I'm going down to see Father O'Malley later on today and do all this stuff.
But better than that.
No, that's probably better than what she did. But I don't do dialects.
You don't need to even say that.
Well, I'm doing a Chris Elliott impersonation right now.
Pretty good.
They did do some research, and they went back to County Cork or wherever she said she was from, and they could not find a Bridie Murphy, but they could find the other people that she had been talking about. And so there's still a question mark as to whether it was real or whether she was in on it with the hypnotist or whatever.
And how old were you when your dad decided you were ready for this material?
It was after they showed me Psycho.
Sure.
I think I was about 5 when
I
they showed me
agree with that order, by the way, 100%.
And I was fascinated by it. And I kept the albums all my life, and I loved that name. Bridie is a version of Bridget. And so that's where the name came from.
I'd never heard it before I saw her name.
You had never heard the name
on
before.
Twitter?
Yeah, no.
I thought there were some missing letters.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people do. We gave her the choice. We put Bridget, I think, on her birth certificate, but we called her Bridie from the start and gave her the choice. She can go either way, and she's stuck with Bridie.
Yeah, and I remember seeing and maybe retweeting a short film, I want to say, that she wrote and directed. Maybe there's been several.
Yeah, she wrote a couple of years ago a movie called Affections, which went to Sundance and got some acclaim, got some good reviews. And then, so now she's done her first feature, which is called Clara's Ghost, not Clara, Clara. Believe me, she corrected me several times on set. And
did you ask her about that distinction and how frustrating it might be for you later when talking about it?
I think she saw how frustrating it was during the shooting for everybody who had to...
She had her own made-up name.
Yeah.
So why not?
You don't know how many times she's been called Bridie.
Oh, I do.
And
I do.
Somebody once said, "Oh, your name's Bright. I'll never forget that name. What a wonderful name, Bright." So she's written this, Clara. This is a movie about a family of entertainers, 2 daughters and a father who are in the entertainment business, who are really not nice people. They're very self-centered and all that. And like in most families, the mother is kind of the brunt of a lot of humor in families, even families that aren't showbiz families.
Right.
And this is about Clara, who is the mother, who finally starts seeing a spirit, a ghost that gives her some courage to
stand up to
herself
people.
and be independent. And we're all playing. This was shot in our house. Abby, my other daughter, plays the other daughter in the role, and my real wife Paula plays Clara. And we're all playing kind of heightened, negative versions of ourselves.
Sure, which may be the most fun to do.
Yeah.
I did a little talked about stand-up special on HBO. And my favorite thing in the world was doing that heightened reality version, evil version of myself. You know the comedian and director David Steinberg.
Yes, he's a friend.
Oh, dear, love him madly.
Yeah.
So he directed my 1-hour HBO special, and I had some writers and I wanted to do some sketches along with the stand-up. And he came in one day and Madonna's Truth or Dare movie had come out. And he said, maybe you want to pimp that. Maybe do these backstage scenes and document yourself the way she chose to document herself.
Right.
Whereas others had always been approached by filmmakers. Do you mind if we document you?
Yeah,
It was clear to all of us that Madonna had chosen to document herself.
Right.
So my own personality backstage was an asshole and a lunatic, and the cameras would be following me and I would be talking. And this is before sort of Larry Sanders and even The Office, and I would talk to the camera as it was following me backstage, and then a nun would appear in full regalia from a doorway, and I would say, "Oh, just a moment, thank you, sister," and she would say, "Thank you for the check and the donation," and I would say, "This is unnecessary to do this in front of the camera," and then I would go in to hug her, and I created this physical move where you'd go in to hug someone. And then immediately from the hug position, shoot your pelvis and buttocks backwards as if you'd been kneed in the balls. So I pretended the nun had kneed me in the nuts. So it was a lot of that. And I found that might be my most enjoyed comedic work I've ever done, was playing this heightened asshole version of myself.
But it's a strange, for me, and maybe if it was for you too, you're totally naked doing that.
Oh my God,
strip yourself down to the ugliest part of yourself.
And you know in you somewhere.
It's there.
The only way this is going to be funny is if I am naked and let this happen.
Absolutely.
And later I can claim it was heightened.
Right. And there's a sequence, and I'm not the star of the movie. My wife is Clara. She's Clara. The story is about the mother, but I'm such a narcissist that, I'm in my studio on the third floor yelling at my agent because I've lost a role on something, and I'm painting something, and you don't know what I'm painting until I hang up the phone and move away, and I'm painting a self-portrait. I'm painting myself. and it's like, that's true.
Sure.
I mean, I am narcissist. I'm an actor. Of course I'm going to be narcissistic. Right. It's a trait I don't want to show people, but I do in this movie.
That might be the hidden joy. We might have just discovered it, which is to allow those inner thoughts to come out when we've spent our lives protecting ourselves from anyone knowing.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what Clara's Ghost did for me, acting in it once. Yeah. And I think it did for Bridie and Abby too, because they were playing awful characters too.
Yeah.
And we're nasty to each other. It takes place through the course of one evening, and as we get increasingly bombed during the night, we become meaner and more bitter and more jealous of each other's successes and all of that. And all of that is there in this business.
And so the genesis, she had this family already. When she approaches you and the rest of the family with the idea, was it by giving you the script? Was it a conversation, I'm thinking about doing this?
She had written a pilot for herself and me to do that was loosely based on Ryan O'Neal and Tatum O'Neal's relationship.
Fantastic.
And that reality show that they had. And I thought it was a great idea. But I think Bridie, she wrote it, and then like me, she put it down, and then she started thinking in kind of larger terms of the dynamic in our family and the dynamics of theatrical family, or a family that's in show business.
Yeah.
And then that evolved into, this Jenna Rollins kind of approach to the mother character, because Bridie's a big fan of Jenna or Gina. I never know.
I think it's Jenna.
So it went from this 2-person thing into this family thing,
right.
And then for her the idea of using all of us and not having actors playing us added a meta level to the whole project, and shooting it in our house was also cheaper because it was, a Kickstarter movie.
Was it?
Yeah, and with virtually no budget, shot in 17 days, and I think the idea of working with us and letting us do, the sides of ourselves that scare us.
Sure.
That really do scare us.
And also,
it's kind of a comment on show business as well as and like Bridie said, in family dynamics, you get stereotyped, you get pinned as what you are in your family, just like in show business.
Right.
And so in this, and I think she was pointing sort of a finger at show business a little bit in this movie as well.
Yeah. So she came to you all with this larger idea.
Yes, she loves, and like I did, Long Day's Journey into Night or Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, anything that takes place through the course of one evening. Right. And she started writing versions of it, and she sent me a few versions, and we talked about it. And she was finding the movie as she was writing these versions. It took her a couple of years, 2 years to write it. And she finally realized, oh no, this is about the mother. This is the mother's story. That's what this movie is. And the rest of us, we're a little bit comic relief, but we're also kind of the, shit stirrers in the story. We're the agitators. We're the, antagonists for sure. Yeah.
But the idea to bring in from the title, Clara's Ghost.
Yeah.
And take this almost into a horror film.
Right.
If not completely,
right,
angle. It was one of the things I felt made it even more original in terms of what to do with this milieu.
Well, she loves playing with genres, with like dramas, comedies, and horror films, and she combines sort of all of those in this. And there's a certain historic aspect to this. The Clara character, or the ghost character, is actually based on a woman that lived in our house in the early 20s, I guess, who was considered by the town to be crazy, and did walk through town naked, did sort of these crazy things, and most likely she was bipolar or had some issues that people didn't understand back then.
And has a version of her revealed itself to any of the family members over the years?
I think there is a version of her inside Bridie.
Okay.
And I think that's where, and I think Bridie, wanted to use that character as the person who helps the mother,
right.
Because I think Bridie is the youngest. I think she's always had, she's always observed how, and we're not as awful as we are in the movie to each other. We are a loving family, but I think she's always observed that that Paula has had to take a back seat to my celebrity, to Abby's, and certainly now to Bridie's.
Yeah. And what's the conversation like as a family? And specifically for Paula, when the decision is made, you're going to be the central character and we're going to be clowns annoying you.
Paula has said that she didn't think this would happen. Because,
Did she think it was a good idea?
Yeah, we support
for her
anything.
To do it.
I can't speak for her, but I think she knew that it was going to be fun. It was going to be a challenge. Sure. She hadn't acted in a long time. She started as an actress.
Right. You met?
Well, we met at Letterman. She had stopped acting at that point. She was working in the talent department, and that's where we met each other. And she did little bits with me on Letterman, and but I think she was excited about the challenge. She went to New York. She took acting classes with a teacher there, and something I have, is so alien to me.
Me too.
Paula had a process, and she actually is acting in the movie. Like I said, I'm playing a stripped down, and maybe I'm not going to say, brave, but it is somebody else was asking me, they were saying, you once said you wanted to try maybe a Lost in Translation kind of movie where you can be funny, but also act dramatically. And I think this is like I've skipped Lost in Translation
and went to this
and gone straight to the final. This is this is just all me. This is me stripped down. This is it.
Right.
I don't know how to do another character. This is it. You know.
Well, you don't want to do another character.
I don't. But Paula is acting in the movie,
Right.
and she's, I think, amazing in it. And I'm not just saying that because she's my wife, but she is.
And this
she's
is
amazing.
being recorded.
Is it? I thought, were we on the air?
Sam, is this still being recorded? I got a headset. Yeah.
Okay.
Up and down.
All right.
Where will people? Is it December 21st? Is that the?
It's opens today, actually the 7th.
Oh, good.
Today the 7th, yes.
Yeah.
And it's going to be in theaters, and then it's on demand, like the next day.
It is going to be in theaters.
Yes.
Well, that's spectacular.
Yeah.
Because that's the hard part, especially for any movie made with no money.
Right.
And
Noah Ryan is releasing it. And again, Bridie did this all herself. And that's the nice thing about this time of life in the entertainment world. There's a lot of venues out there that you can take advantage of.
Right, which also makes it that much more difficult, I think, to get into theaters, to actually have a theatrical distribution.
Yes.
Because all the other channels don't cost any money to market.
Right.
So the people who want to buy your film don't want to spend that much money unless
Right.
they have big enough names to justify a P&A budget.
Well, I also have to say, and maybe this is because I'm a simplistic guy, but I now with TVs, your home TV being giant and the sound being great and all these on-demand options to watch movies from the 70s to now or whatever era you want to watch, to me, the movie experience in a movie theater really, it's got to be like a giant 3D movie to get me into a seat now to watch something,
Yeah.
And I hate that. I hate that I can't just go and watch, and sit and watch a drama without thinking, I'd be more comfortable on my sofa watching this.
More and more I find, and I love the theater going experience, but more and more I find those experiences while watching a film in a theater, I spend on an average a minimum of 31% during the experience thinking, is this guy going to fucking shut up?
Right.
Why don't those people understand they're not at home?
Right. Yeah.
So I'd rather be able to say that to the person seated next to me on the couch at home.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm the same way. I'm exactly the same way. And
tell me, we had this experience, Jamie, my better half, and I. Packed theater, very excited to see this film. Tickets in advance, reserved seating, all those things. Can't wait. Finally sit down. Place is packed. She's on my left. Guy sitting to her left with his daughter decides he needs to be on his phone during the trailers. So, okay, maybe that'll stop.
right.
Movie starts, still on his phone. Can't get enough. Won't stop.
He's not talking, he's texting.
He's texting.
So it's it's the light off his phone.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And we're now 11 minutes into the movie, and this hasn't stopped. And we've both spent the 11 minutes not speaking to each other, but both thinking,
Right.
are you fucking kidding me? When is this going to stop?
Right.
Do I say something? And when I say something, what will be the outcome?
Right.
Well, because this person who's doing this clearly has total disregard for everyone around them.
Right.
So is there anything I can say that will change their opinion? Or will I only enforce them, having them dig in those awful claws and heels to be that much more of an asshole?
Right.
To stand up for their right to be an asshole.
Right.
And sure enough, she says something to this guy. He has complete disregard for not only all human beings, but any sense of...
So wait, Jamie says something to him.
Jamie says something to him. And it was just...
Do you mind or...
yeah, exactly. Could you please turn that
Yeah.
off? The nicest version, which I'm sure she had already rehearsed
Right.
1,100 times.
Right.
And his reaction was, go fuck yourself.
Oh, my God.
So now... And he says it loud enough for me to hear it.
Oh, my God.
And my instinct is to lean over and say, what is your fucking problem?
Right.
And we start to get into it. And he's in front of his daughter. His point of view just crazy enough that you realize this is not going. There's no logic. It's like talking to a drunk.
Right.
This is
right.
There's no way to break through.
Right.
And have any sense of satisfaction. And we stop and we're sitting there both steaming, and finally, I think she, or maybe it was I, said to the other, we got to go.
Right.
So we get up, we leave, we find a manager.
But when you said you had to go, you were definitely going to leave, or were you just trying to make the point to this guy? Were you?
Well, the first attempt, I think, in my mind was, let's find a manager. I want to set this guy on fire.
Right.
And so instead of setting him on fire, I need management to know that this guy is being completely irresponsible to the theater going experience.
Right.
We find a manager. The manager finds security. They go back inside, and at this point we'll get some satisfaction if he's removed.
Right. Right.
The outcome is, I'm sorry, sir. He's a paid customer too. He said he won't do it anymore. And our feeling is, well, we don't want to go back and sit down next to this asshole. And also, we've just missed 17 minutes of the movie.
Right.
We're done. The outcome was we left. Asshole got to stay there.
He won.
And he won.
He won.
And it will remain in both of our memories, I'm sure, as this could happen anytime.
Yeah.
This could happen anytime now.
And I guarantee you, he went back on his phone. And felt better about it because he had two empty seats.
That's right.
Next to him, no one's going to complain.
That's right. Yeah, and all this in front of his daughter, just a tremendous example to humanity.
Yeah.
And we, we talked about that for maybe a month.
No, I'm sure.
There was no letting it go.
I can't believe that. Did the theater give your, money back?
They gave us our money back. They gave us free tickets to come back anytime, please. We feel so horrible. But also they kept saying, you can go back in. He's apologized and he says he won't do it again.
Right.
I don't want to sit next to this guy. I don't want to see this guy ever again. And if you're not going to throw him out, fuck you.
Right. Exactly. But
that was, I feel like, okay, well that now, all bets are off. That could happen anytime.
Yeah, no, it can.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Growing up in New York, the fear was, and long before cell phones, for me, it was, rats running across, your feet, at the Baronet and Coronet on 3rd Avenue there. But I don't like I'm not a people person, and I don't like being in the dark with a bunch of strangers to enjoy a movie. I do enjoy it better at home now. I do enjoy it. But you know what's, I think, great now? And this happened when my kids were growing up, and I think it influenced Bridie in her decision to become a director, is that, like, when we were growing up, you saw The Wizard of Oz once a year. When my kids were growing up, we had the tape of it. They could put it in, watch it over and over again, study scenes, look at how composition was, look at acting, look at these kind of things. And I think like a whole new generation of writers and directors and actors, has been raised on, videotape and been able to glean stuff from that,
doing homework from home,
doing homework without realizing that they're doing homework.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, people being influenced by other people without knowing that they were influenced by them.
Yeah. It is a strange struggle for me, only because coming from stand-up comedy and playing to a live audience and knowing that every audience can react completely different.
Right. And
they've never been in a room together as they are right now.
Right.
And I will comment on it sometimes during the show. I'll say, for a group that has not rehearsed, you're doing very, very well. And comedians, the story's forever about not being able to take a compliment after a show.
Right.
The show was great. I saw you last night. You were great. Which show were you at? That problem. So the live experience, and then seeing the New York premiere and seeing a television show like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel in front of a theater audience and hearing that involuntary audience from a group of strangers in the dark is magical.
Yeah.
And So it is a difficult
No, it's
struggle to let go of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always liked being in front of an audience. I've liked, with Dave, I've liked it on sitcoms that I've done when it's an actual audience,
Right. It's a weird, magical thing.
It is a different kind of thing. Absolutely. When I was a tour guide at Rockefeller Center,
Your first audience.
I enjoyed that because I could make them laugh.
Right.
I had my pat jokes about, the murals, and the guys wearing diapers in 30 Rock, on the ceiling there, and I could make them laugh even if they didn't speak English. Usually, if they didn't, and they laughed even harder.
Sure.
But I've always liked an audience.
Also, you're controlling them, and
that's true. That's a big part of it.
It's a huge thing that most performers don't talk about, and
Or
a good
admit to.
percentage aren't even aware of.
Right.
The power of that control.
Right.
I directed a Talking Heads documentary called "Misery Loves Comedy" with a thesis: you have to be miserable to be funny. But I interviewed about 60 annoyingly famous funny people, and away from that thesis was talking about that sense of power on stage, and the power comes from control that doesn't exist in real life.
Right. Right.
The endorphin that's released, but also this weird heightened reality where you're taking the audience for a ride of your choosing. You sort of control the tempo. They control with their feedback the energy of the performance.
Right.
They can slow you down or speed you up.
Right.
And all of that doesn't exist in any other art form.
Right.
It really
right.
doesn't.
No, it
to
doesn't.
my knowledge.
No, it doesn't.
And I would liken it more to a boxer, a fighter who has people in their corner, but when they step into the ring, they're living moment by moment based on their instincts and thoughts and decisions, literally moment by moment.
And what's interesting that you bring up boxing is, like, for me, I don't really follow sports unless it's like the World Series or something. But if I'm channel surfing and I come across boxing, I'm glued to it.
Yeah.
I am
even if I don't know who's fighting.
I don't.
Right.
I'm just like, I'm suddenly, okay, this is so simplistic. This is just this and that for me. And one of them is going to win. I'm going to watch this and I'm glued to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a little off what we've been talking about, but I would follow boxing if I had the brain to follow stats and that kind of thing. But it always mesmerizes me. It always gets me hooked. Is a boxing match, and I guess sort of in a way when you're doing. I never did stand up comedy. I did it once when I was 16.
Where?
I think I auditioned to Catch a Rising Star.
Oh, wow. And what brought you to that decision to even do that?
I thought I was going to go into comedy, so I should try to do stand-up. And
How hard could this be?
I wrote like, a terrible Bob and Ray type bit for a friend of mine and myself to do. It bombed. I ended doing an impersonation of Lee Harvey Oswald, and the
always a winner.
Always a winner. The MC said, okay, thanks for leaving them barfing, and because I think I just did that pose of Oswald getting shot, and never went back to it. But I think that even the stuff that I have done on sitcoms in front of an audience, and there is an element of a boxing match going on there too. There's an element of, like you said, control, but it's you're using your talent, you're using your ability to
trusting your instincts
to kind of control these people in front of, to win.
Yeah. Have you directed?
I did direct a couple of small little things. I have no desire to do it. I am so lucky that I've had a very, fruitful career and have a great cult following and would never put it down. But I think I'm reaching a point in my life right now where it's time to slow down. I'm not particularly passionate about anything anymore, unfortunately, creatively.
Yeah.
I think the man-child persona that I kind of developed is a little odd now at 58,
But you read at a 62-year-old level. Isn't that true?
I try. I try. But I mean, I can see myself retiring fairly soon. And doing, I like to paint. I love Maine, I love, traveling and that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. For a lot of us, the idea of retiring means
death.
I feel like creativity and the expression of it actually keeps me young.
Right.
So is there any concern there? Do you have other hobbies and interests that will also keep you young?
Well, yes, young-ish. And I'm not sure I would ever be retired in the sense of never working again. But I have for the last few years just been in a position where I'll do something if somebody calls me.
Yeah.
Right. And that to me is pretty much the level of retirement I'll have till I die.
Sure, that's right.
If somebody needs an elderly bald guy with a blonde beard, and they call me, I'll probably work, when I'm in my 80s. But it's not, like I was saying before, I'm not like thinking, I have to be on television every week now. I have to find something that's every day. There's a concern about money for sure. There's a concern about, being able to support myself and my family and all that. But I think I've done, it's hard not to feel like I've done enough in a way.
Yeah.
And anything else I'm happy to do, but I don't want to push myself on people anymore, which is how pretty much my career has been.
Well, if you want to see my guest, Chris Elliott's swan song.
I've described every project I've done for the last 30 years as
your swan song. We have a segment on the show called Famous Questions. These questions themselves are not famous. They come from a famous person. And these questions are written by said famous person directly towards you, specifically the guest. This one comes from Brian Dole Murray, who asks, I wonder if I gave him as much indigestion as he and Spewy gave me. Spewy?
Spewy.
I am saying it right.
Spewy was an episode of Get a Life where I befriended an extraterrestrial named Spewy because Spewy was spewing this horrible gunk all the time. And at the end, Brian and I eat the extraterrestrial. And that was actually it was an Adam Resnick idea, and it wasn't based on E.T. It was based on Mac and Me. That horrible movie that I think McDonald's produced. Because they were eating at McDonald's a lot. Yeah. But that's what that was based on. Brian is such a sweetheart.
Yeah.
He's such a great guy. And we became friends on Get a Life, and then we did Groundhog Day together. Yeah. And we've kept in touch, and I used to send him, he loved Remy Martin. And so I used every holiday, I would send him, a case of Remy Martin as a gift. And then there was a couple of years where I was not working, and I just sent him, like a little split of Remy Martin, and just told him sorry. It's been kind of a rough year. But,
that's fantastic. Yeah, I remember telling Brian I was reoccurring on a show. And he said, oh, yeah, I love reoccurring. They're always happy to see you.
He was in Cabin Boy. And the funny thing about Brian in Cabin Boy, which was a hard shoot, he was like, Adam would be blocking the scenes. And Brian was always like, his name was Skunk in Cabin Boy. He was like, I think Skunk would probably be down below during this scene, wouldn't he? Kind of be...
not in the scene.
Yeah, he wouldn't. Exactly. He just wanted to get out of the scene.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
He is the greatest, laziest actor.
And such a wonderful actor. I mean, when I first saw National Lampoon's Vacation, and Chevy Chase comes in to check in.
Yeah, I can send out a mailer.
That line, his thing, and his little
watermelon
does that,
seeds,
the
he's
watermelon
spitting into a handkerchief
he is
while eating.
That was it.
The specific choices in that scene.
Yeah.
He steals every moment.
Every single moment. And
Yeah.
that was when I fell in love with him. And he did the first season of my show, Get a Life. There was an episode where he runs a school, a handsome boy modeling school. And he's just teaching me how to be a male model.
Uh-huh.
And then the next season he played a different character and I moved into his garage. But I love him. He's just, like you, just, a great actor and also just the kind of guy you just want to hang with. You just want to have fun hanging with.
Yeah. He and Tina are in Kansas City now, so you can go visit them.
Yeah. Well, she's from there, right?
Yeah.
Originally?
Right.
Yeah. She was a PA on Groundhog Day.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
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 She's a successful veterinarian.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Okay. It is now a time in the show where we do a segment called Ask Kevin. I feel like we may have covered this, but let's see. Where you're allowed to ask me any question. It can be silly or sincere or neither. And
Okay. What was it like to work with Scorsese?
the next segment of the show.
Oh, you can't ask Scorsese questions.
What specifically do you? It's too general.
Did he give you direction, or did you just do your stuff? And I mean, because
Yeah.
it's so everything you're doing is so natural. The uncomfortableness, clearly you're a front. It's all there without being spelled out, without the lines being there. It's all coming from you.
Yeah.
I
I started directing a couple of years ago, and I take a lot from one aspect of the way he directs actors.
Right.
So within the composition of the shot, if you were to put a clear graph over the monitor, he would know what's in every square of the graph.
Wow.
Within the composition. It's
Wow.
all very, very specific. And then within that composition that's painstakingly perfect, the actors are free to do whatever they want. So in the scene where Bob, because that's easily what you call
Sure.
that idiot, who I never knew really the entire experience, if he even knew that I was an actor in the movie.
Wow.
With him.
Wow.
There was just this weird.
Was that good or bad?
It was undermining
Yeah.
at times,
Yeah.
but also I respected his process, which is to be completely absorbed in that day's work.
Right. Right.
Not being dismissive in any way, shape, or form, or even ignoring me, even though that's how you ultimately feel.
Right.
But he's so dialed into what he has to accomplish in the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then the way that he and Marty, another name you never get used to saying,
Yeah.
Bob and Marty, their process of working together. And you just feel like you're a witness.
I hate saying this, but I've heard it a lot. Shorthand. Did they have a shorthand with each other?
Well, that's the only way to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it come from all those films together.
Right.
And also you just sort of have the sense of, I'm just a witness to this, right? Isn't that my gig?
Right.
On this one.
Right.
But after every take, when Bob and I are sitting at the table in the casino where we're talking, and it boils down to the number of blueberries in the muffins, and
Right.
we go into the kitchen. But at
Right.
that table part of it, after a take, Scorsese would come by and kneel down. So I just remember a little bobbing Scorsese head at the edge of the table when he would sincerely ask, so what do you think? More angry? Less angry? What do you want to do? And it wasn't a game that some directors play when they say, what do you think, less or more? When they themselves know they want
less.
They want less.
Right.
They're going to give you both options so that as soon as you do the wrong one,
Right.
they can say, great, we got that. Now let's try less.
So he legitimately was leaving it up to you.
What do you want to do?
Right.
What do you want to do?
Wow, that's great though.
And the two of them like to do 37 takes
Right.
of everything.
Right.
I am bored to tears after 3 takes.
Yeah.
I only hear
I am
myself
too. I am
acting,
too.
and I only feel like I'm acting after 3 takes.
Right.
I think I was in the scene the first 3 takes.
Right.
And now I'm just a monkey repeating things.
Right. Yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm no good. at that.
Right.
And I would learn from Bob. There's no other way to say it. Do something completely different on every take, and then fuck the editing process where they have to
continuity.
Continuity doesn't. It's
not. Did he talk to you in between takes?
No, but I have to say I didn't try to engage him because I was
intimidated,
too respectful to what appeared to be a guy
in character,
but dialed into the job at hand.
I read somewhere, and it struck me as funny that Ben Stiller, in one of those Meet the Fokker movies, had to do a driving scene with Bob.
Sure.
And a camera car was pulling them, and they were in the car alone, and they had to do their dialogue, and they would do their dialogue, cut, then the car would have to turn around, and they'd have to go back to where they were, and it was the most uncomfortable 17 minutes for Ben,
for sure,
because he didn't know. Do I talk to him?
Yeah, the idea of making small talk, with someone like that,
De Niro,
who's dialed into their work,
right,
in any situation,
right,
is very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And in fact, one day when we shot something, and he did make a sort of comment which was meant to make me laugh, and did make me laugh. It was as if he had pulled out a gun and shot me. Right. That's how shocking it was.
Right.
That he tried to make me laugh by making a comment about, I don't even know.
What was it?
I don't even
remember?
know, like an extra walking by or something. But it was.
So he never just said, "I like that one. That was good. Good one. Good one."
No.
Wow.
Wow. It was always very nice and very easy.
Right.
He wasn't.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I've told the story a couple times where I got the call while working on the set of Usual Suspects from the agent. Martin Scorsese wants you to be in his next film called Casino, written by Nick Pileggi, who wrote Goodfellas. It takes place in Vegas in the 70s with De Niro and Pesci. And I said, stop talking.
Right.
We're done.
Right.
Yes. When do they need me? The process is you have to have a sit with De Niro, and then you have to have a sit with Scorsese. Mm-hmm. And I said, are these auditions? What do you mean? Mm-hmm. No, it's an offer. It's just how they work. Mm-hmm. And I said, so they just want to make sure you're not a dick or an asshole. I was going to get to set and go, so what was it like when you did the thing? So they were photo opposites in the individual sits I had with each of them.
Right.
Where De Niro was at the Bel Air Hotel in a bungalow, and I was taken from the lobby to his bungalow by the casting agent, who walked me over and said, good luck. And I knocked on the door, and he opened it. And I remember sort of a Howard Hughes sort of thing, where his beard and hair and everything, and I don't remember if the toenails were curling, but the man had clearly...
there was milk bottles of urine lined up against the...
But it was super dark inside at 12 noon, all the drapes. And, come on in. And sat down. How you doing? You all right? You need something? You need anything? Something? No, I'm okay. Anyways, just wanted to say hello, see how you doing. And can I get you anything? And that was repeated 6 times, and then I was let go.
Wow.
I was allowed to leave.
So what would have happened if you said, yeah, I'll take a scotch?
I don't know. There was a sense...
Would you have ended up just sitting there drinking with him? Or do you...
I have regrets, which is, why not use this opportunity to get to know this guy? But I felt like I was so auditioning to not be an asshole.
Right.
That I didn't even want to be myself.
Right.
So I just was super polite.
Yeah.
And answered any question, but there wasn't any.
Right.
Other than, how you doing? You all right? Can I get you anything? No, I'm okay.
So good. That is such a good impersonation.
And then Scorsese talked for 90 minutes.
Right.
So this guy's real. He's a real guy. He lives in San Diego, and he really existed, and his name is... and I just sat there, and again, no questions.
Right.
Just, I was an audience.
Right.
For a monologue.
Yeah.
And Martin Scorsese does a brilliant impersonation of Martin Scorsese.
Right.
By the way, during the European press conference, when the entire cast of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is lined up in
Milan,
Italy, and there's an Italian audience, and the interviewer who's British, would ask each of us a question, and then in English, and then we would answer in English, and then she would interpret it for the audience in Italian. And so the very first person spoke humorously was probably Amy Sherman Palladino, and the audience laughed as she spoke in English, and then the interpreter would then repeat it in Italian.
No laugh.
And and 11 more people would laugh.
Right.
As opposed to the other 200.
Yeah.
And so I commented immediately, even though I was at the far end of this and I knew I was going to be the 11th person to ask a question. We each had a microphone. So I got on pretty early saying, you don't need to interpret. It feels like the audience knows what's happening.
Right.
But by the time she got to me, she said, I know you started out in stand-up comedy and that the show has part of the storyline is Rachel Brosnahan's character finding her way and discovering that she wants to be a stand-up comedian. And I talked a little bit about that. And then I said, I have to say, here, it just dawned on me that when I do De Niro as an impersonation, he's really doing that moment we've all seen of Mussolini in the video when he's gesturing and mugging, like I'm not going to take any shit or whatever the hell he was trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And that was met, unlike your reaction, it was met by crickets.
Oh,
the sound
my
of
gosh.
Crickets.
Oh, my gosh.
And
they're still sensitive about him.
Amy Sherman said, of all the people you could impersonate, go with Mussolini? And it was pretty hilarious.
That is hilarious. I think Trump does that look too.
Yes.
Trump does that, sort of that lip up.
Yeah.
That,
fuck you, what you think of me.
There you
go. So a very long answer to a very good question.
No, I was
like
fascinated because, I'm a fan of Scorsese's as you are.
So that was surprising to me, knowing how specific all of his choices are, clearly from his work. From the shooting to the editing to the lighting, all of it. This is a guy.
It's like a Chuck Close.
Yes, right.
Canvas of squares.
And then knowing the participants have total freedom to literally do whatever the fuck they want.
Right. I did a movie with Woody Allen, and I was cut out of it, Radio Days.
Sure.
And but his directing was non-existent. It was essentially, and the scene was mostly improvised. I was supposed to be a comedy writer in the Radio Days, and which I guess was the 40s is when it took place, and but he sat on a sofa on the set reading a newspaper, and then and the AD would yell action and all that, and we would do it, and then he would come up and just quietly say, I don't think they said that in the 1940s, so don't say that, but everything else is fine, and go back and sit down.
Right.
And I left there thinking, well, wait a second, if that scene stays in the movie, we all wrote it. We all did it.
Right.
It didn't stay in the movie, but he wrote me a nice letter, hoping that I wouldn't become an alcoholic now that the scene was cut out of the movie. But he didn't realize I already was. So,
right. Yeah. That ship had sailed.
Exactly.
And now it's time for Kevin's pop quiz. Between 5 and 15 points possible for each of the following 3 questions. Once the final score is tabulated, it will be posted on our website, along with the current standing of the top 100. Are you ready?
I guess, Kevin.
That's the correct answer.
Jesus
You've
Christ.
already got the first question correct.
Oh, my God.
Question number 1, Keith David or David Keith?
Keith David.
Correct. Question 2, Carl Weathers or the weather in Carlsbad?
Carl Weathers.
Also correct. And question 3, the last question, Steve?
No.
Incorrect. I'm sorry.
That's
2 out of 3.
Seriously? That's wrong? Shit.
It's impossible to be wrong. And I've always celebrated as Sam, our engineer, stood up with his fist in the air, as he always does when the guest gets 3 out of 3. And I just wanted to be different. Your answer was perfect.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I had to think about it, though.
Well, no, I think
it was 50-50.
I think the listeners thought either we both had a stroke or you were in fact thinking about it.
I think I have had a couple of strokes during this, but this has been fun. You're so great, and you're so great at this.
Well, we had a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt normal. It didn't feel like I had to, act or perform or do anything.
And 84 minutes went by.
Oh,
that's too
Jesus
long.
Christ. That I should be paid for at this point.
Thank you for signing the disclaimer and the disclosure and the non-agreement. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you,
What a
Kevin.
pleasure.
You're great. Thank you
You
for
live
having me.
on the East Coast.
East Coast, Connecticut, Maine.
Oh, well, from the film clips that I've seen of the movie, I love your home.
Oh, thank you.
And I can't wait to come and stay for a bit.
You're welcome to. It's we'll sell it to you anytime.
Okay.
It's the film crew ruined it.
Now sit there uncomfortably while I wrap things up for the folks at home. There you go. There is yet another episode of the chat show. Write to us again, as always, at kpcsfanmail@gmail.com. I think that's the email. Did I get it right? From memory, kpcsfanmail@gmail.com. Look at that. Until next time, well, let's thank Sam, the engineer to the stars.
Always my pleasure.
I want to say Kiefer.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and I'm not wearing headphones, so when you say, yes, that's correct, I have to read your lips. But I did, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Sam Kiefer, engineer of the stars, and the fine folks at Earwolf. 30% of the folks here are fine. And Hannah, the booking person who made this possible, who said, would you like Chris Elliott on the show? Oh. And I think I emailed back, all caps, yes.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So thank you, Hannah. Is it Crichton, like Michael Crichton? Dear Christ, it is. We're looking through glass now to Hannah and Sam with the inability to hear them, but I'm enjoying it.
No, that's the best way to communicate with Hannah and Sam.
If only that asshole in the movie theater that day had been on the other side of a glass partition. And to Corey Levin in post. And Matt, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. Don't bother. It's very close to apoplectic.
That's his personality, isn't it? Or that is his name.
Yes. Until next time, and as always, get out of my face.